Welcome to this week's roundup of news and polls from Ipsos MORI. And as lockdown starts to lift, how are the British public feeling? The answer is uncomfortable. What we found, just as people started to look at going back to bars and restaurants on Super Saturday on the 4th of July, was that 6 out of 10 people said they were not at all comfortable with going back to bars and restaurants. And similarly, people are uncomfortable about going to the theatre, even going on holiday abroad, going to a swimming pool, or going to a sort of sporting or music event. And 40% not comfortable even going to the hairdressers, though I enjoyed my haircut on Saturday. So there's a real sort of level of anxiety out there, and this hasn't shifted, interestingly, since May. So you might think that with the death rate falling, people would be starting to relax. We've all seen pictures of hundreds of people on the beach or thousands of people in the streets in Soho in London. But overall, the British public as a whole remain very, very cautious. And 6 out of 10 people say that the government is relaxing measures too quickly. Only 1 person in 10, or just under 1 person in 10, 8%, says that they've been too slow to let us out from lockdown, like some critics have been suggesting. And whichever party you vote for, Conservative or Labour, the balance of opinion is that the government is going too fast. One of the reasons for that seems to be that public concern about the virus, both in terms of its threat to the country as a whole, or indeed to themselves, is higher than it has actually been for some months. And the reason seems to be either that people are now finally contemplating going out for the first time, or that they've heard about things like the outbreak in Leicester and the lockdown, the local lockdown in Leicester, etc. But either way, and we'll keep tracking this, the public remains very anxious despite actual numbers of cases of the disease falling. And because of that, the public remains pretty critical of the government. The proportion of people who say that we went into lockdown too late is now at nearly 7 in 10, and only 5% say that the government was too fast in its reaction and took us into lockdown too soon. So the public tends to think that the government is being too hasty in taking us out of lockdown, and indeed that it was late in responding to the virus. And this, I think, is going, we will see how this proceeds, but it's important. And this is despite the fact that lockdown isn't good for the British public. 3 out of 5 of us say that the cost of living has gone up since the start of the crisis. We've noticed that prices are rising in the shops. All sorts of interest groups from across the world of business and the trade unions have been calling on the government to do more. And of course, this week, Rishi Sunak, who is currently the most popular politician in Britain, far more popular than either Keir Starmer or the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has announced a new VAT cut, billions more to create jobs, billions more for the arts, a new deal to build, all of these things, money, more magic money tree money coming out of the woodwork to try and stabilise the economy. And yet people are still pretty sort of critical of the government. I mean, in one sense, they always are, but it will be interesting to see how it develops. And one of the things that we've been doing, as well as surveys, of course, we have a large ethnography centre in our team in London, and they've asked our colleagues and diarists to go out and actually explore last weekend. Was it really a great British piss-up? Did life start to get back to normal? And I think this starts to put some flesh on the bones of those raw statistics about just how cautious people are. Other things that are going to be heavily affected by this crisis and the aftermath, of course, is the public sector as a whole. And on the 15th of July, my colleagues Gideon Skinner and Sarah Costell will bring out some of our latest data on where the public wants public spending to go. We've seen a massive expansion in the role of the state in the last few months, and to be honest, even before COVID-19 burst onto the scene this year, there had been a general trend in favour of rising public spending, which was reflected, of course, in Boris Johnson's pronouncements as soon as he became leader of the Conservative Party. More money for schools, more money for hospitals, more money for the police. But where do we go from here as the bills rocket into billions extra of spending, and how will we ultimately pay for it? Do join us on the 15th of July at 2 o'clock. If you're interested in politics, and I think some of you listening to this maybe, last month we looked at the Labour Party's fortunes with Alistair Campbell and others. This month we're looking at the Conservative Party's opportunities. Will they carry on winning elections and just romp home in 2024? Well, the answer is, of course, nobody knows. But what are the sort of omens looking like? We were joined by the Deputy Chief of Staff to David Cameron and Asa Bennett from the Daily Telegraph to talk about the state of the Conservative Party under Boris Johnson and the new challenge challenge posed by Keir Starmer. So if you're interested in that, please join our podcast. You can click here. Generally, if you're interested in COVID-19 or what it means for your organisation, we're updating this page on our website on a daily basis with new information, new surveys from around the world. So please join us there. And that's all for this week. Stay safe and go out. Have fun. See you soon. Bye.